The January 6th investigations are still ongoing. It's still all in the news because Congress is, they're still trying to find, they're still trying to say that President Trump was involved uh, in one way or another. Even though he was acquitted of impeachment for the second time, saying that he wasn't involved in the January 6th insurrection. But for some reason, Congress is doing what it always does and focusing on anything else but uh, problems that are the real problems that are happening in this country. So, yeah, January 6th still being talked about endlessly. Um, and so, in this video, uh, like, it just came up in my head, this like idea. I would do a video, like, since this is still uh, ongoing. I wanted to do a video talking about um, the January 6th insurrection in comparison to the 2020 George Floyd riots. And more importantly, like more than comparing the two, I'm going to be talking about why one is talked about more than the other. So, why the 2020 riots are talked about more than January 6th. So I had to go back and do some research, not a lot because I followed both of these incidents, um, the 2020 riots more than the January 6th insurrection. But I still had to do some research because it like happened months ago, and the 2020 riots happened a few years ago. So, but I was following both of them real time when they happened live. So yeah, I'll just get into. I'll just briefly explain what happened with both of them, and I'll start with um, the 2020 George Floyd riots. So most people are aware of what happened with the George Floyd situation, but just for the sake of the video and for anybody who like for some reason doesn't know, I'll just briefly explain. So early in 2020, uh, police officer uh, Derek Chauvin and his partner were arrested for being involved in the killing of George Floyd. Uh, he was a black man who was being arrested for using counterfeit money at this store. And so I saw the video, as did a lot of people, and it was showing he was, resisting arrest, and yeah, I mean, eventually he was placed on his stomach. He was arrested, and in the video, it shows Officer Chauvin. He has placing his knee on George Floyd's neck, and said it was for around 9 minutes, and then um, it was saying that's what caused George Floyd to die, and so yeah, that's what Derek Chauvin was arrested for, and um, so in this case, Officer Chauvin's defense was arguing that George Floyd died from too much drugs in his system, more specifically, fentanyl. I think it's fentanyl overdose or something like that. And they were saying that was the reason for George Floyd's death. It wasn't for what Officer Chauvin did to him. And um, and then on the other hand, George Floyd's defense was saying, the prosecution was saying that um, George Floyd died because his airways were blocked. Uh, he died from was it suffocation because his knee was he was Officer Chauvin was kneeling on his neck for 9 minutes. Um, so yeah, and so Officer Chauvin was eventually found guilty of killing George Floyd, and Now, I didn't really take this seriously, because there's just so much hypocrisy with black people. Um, this was just like this was just like I don't know, the usual for me. Um, like finding some reason to like throw race into it again, and I mean, like I said, there's so much hypocrisy in the black community, because when it involves a white person killing a black person, everybody's up in arms. But when it comes to the day to day violence inflicted within the black community, black people killing black people, uh, nobody bats an eyelash. And I mean, like, this is like, I mean, everybody knows about this, but it's not talked about a lot, of course, because of the society we live in nowadays. So, I mean, this was something else that I didn't really take seriously. What I did take seriously was what followed after the George Floyd incident, um, which were the 2020 riots, which I'm about to get into. So while the court process was going on, um, the whole country was in chaos. Uh, all 50 states were either involved in protesting or rioting. Now, it did start off in the early stages uh, of the 2020 George Floyd riots. It did start off as protesting. And then as these protests spread, then people were saying the protests were being hijacked by, what's it called? Like these extremists, radicalists. I call them terrorists. I mean, they are terrorists. Uh, and that's what turned them from protests into riots. Uh, so yeah, the whole country was like involved in this, and it was just so horrible. I mean, I'm gonna get more into this, uh, but yeah, that's basically what happened throughout most of 2020. I mean, 2020 was already a crazy year. We had the pandemic, then we had these riots nationwide, and then it was just a crazy year, uh, as a lot of other people can attest to. So then I'm going to go on to the January 6th insurrection. Um, so when did that happen? Didn't that happen last year, I think? Last year, January 6th, I think. But yeah, so what happened was the presidential election was being, what's it called, certified in Congress. And President Trump's supporters were getting like really angry and agitated because they were afraid that Joe Biden was about to win the um, presidential election. So they organized on social media uh, this what I mean. It started. I'm not even sure if it started off as a protest, but basically a bunch of people showed up at on Capitol Hill, and I didn't find out until later. Like I wasn't watching this as it was happening. Um, it wasn't until I got back home that I was informed of what actually happened. Um, but yeah, they stormed President Trump's supporters stormed the Capitol building and just terrorized the police and like everybody who was trapped inside the Capitol building. And yeah, a couple of people were shot and killed that day. And eventually, later, a lot of other people involved in January 6th were arrested and charged. Um, but yeah, also a sad day. Also, something that should have never happened. So, yeah, that's January 6th. Uh, so yeah, that was briefly what was involved for both of these events, if you can even call them that. So I'm going to start off with the 2020 riots. Now, like I said, it was happened national in all 50 states, and more specifically, the cities that were involved in the riots were here in Chicago, um, San Francisco, California, Seattle, uh, Portland, Oregon, New York City, Los Angeles, California, and Minneapolis. I should have mentioned Minneapolis first. I think that's where the riots started in, was Minneapolis, because that's where um, the George Floyd incident occurred. Um, so yeah, in Minneapolis, uh, as most people know, they started burning down a police building, a police station, more specifically, and I think that's what kicked off the riots, but I'm not for sure. Um, yeah, it was really sad. The whole From then on, like the whole country just devolved into this anarchy and chaos and violence and destruction and everything you can think of. And so the cities I mentioned, I'm gonna be citing the sources. So this is from USA Today, and according to USA Today, in total, now I couldn't find in my research like pinpoint the specific places and states that the riots took place. But all in all, the protests and riots took place in like 1,700 places, according to this USA Today article, which I'm going to post all the articles in the description as usual. But yeah, 50 states, 1,700 places. And this was as of 6/29/2020. So February, March, April, May, June 29th, 2020. And this was be like, I think this was what, kind of in like the beginning stages of the rise, because the rise lasted like for some months, like over the summer. So they said, like in that article, it was expected to grow, but those were the numbers that was showing like at that time of 1,700 places. So by the time it was all over with, I'm pretty sure it was like more than 1,700 places. Um, but yeah, and so in contrast, um, January 6th, uh, it went on for like it just lasted that day, and according to ABC7.com, 10,000 people um, were on the Capitol premises, but only 2,000 stormed the Capitol. So when you compare these two, I mean, there's 300 million people in the United States. Obviously, not all 300 million people were um, engaged in the 2020 riots, um, but it still happened in all 50 states. So, yeah, I imagine it was like a lot more than, 10,000 or 2,000 people. I mean, I'm not for sure. Like, I don't know in all how many people rioted during 2020 George Floyd riots, but I have to imagine like it was a lot more than the people who were involved in the January 6th insurrection. Like a lot more. Um, this January, um, the 2020 George Floyd riots happened like on a much larger scale than the January 6th insurrection. Is what I'm trying to say. Um, so yeah, almost 140 officers were injured in the January 6th. Uh, Five people died, including one police officer, according to the Department of Justice. Um, Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly how many people were injured or how many people died during the 2020 riots. I didn't hear about any deaths during the 2020 riots. I heard about a lot of injuries, a lot of destruction, a lot like billions of dollars in damage to like cities across the country. Surprisingly, I didn't hear about any deaths. Actually, you know what? I think I did hear about this one black officer's death during the 2020 riots, but I didn't hear like too much about like any any other deaths. And I'm pretty sure it was just more than just one person dying during that. I mean, like I said, this happened over a period of like um, several months. Um, but if it was more than the 140 injuries or the five people, I think it's more. I think more than five people died during the 2020 riots, but I don't know about the injuries. I would say everything that happened on the during the 2020 riots were on a much larger scale than January 6th. From the injuries to the to deaths to damage. I mean everything. Um, so yeah, now I'm just well, yeah, I already mentioned that January 6th just happened on that day, and I don't know when the riots started, because I think I have it somewhere in my notes. George Floyd, he died in, I think it was May of 2020. Yeah, it's April. I think it was May, according to my research. And so, yeah, May, June, July, August, September. Not sure if it went on into October. So, like 4 or 5 months that the 2020 riots lasted in all. I'm not sure, like, and it, once again, like, my research, it didn't say, like, exactly how long these riots lasted, but I would say 4 to 5 months in comparison to just, like, on one day for January 6th. Um, so I would say overall, based on what I've said so far, and I mean, I'm still, like, gonna get into more of what happened, both of these events, more specifically the 2020 riots, because that's what I'm focusing mostly on. But overall, uh, I'd say the 2020 riots had more of a negative, much more of a negative impact on this country than January 6th insurrection. And of course, the mainstream media, will refuse to acknowledge this or admit this. But yet everybody's going to go on and on and on about January 6th. And again, neither of these incidents should have happened. It was both of them were devastating for the country. Both of them just like it shouldn't have happened. Both of them it affected many lives, and yeah, but as far as like which one we should be paying more attention to, it should definitely be the 2020 riots, because there's a lot of deep seated issues involved with the riots, more than just an officer um, killing an, an officer like being charged with killing um, somebody. It's a lot more than that. Um, because, like I said, people were saying this was about race. It was about a white officer who was being racist against a black man, and um, but as we can see from like as we can see from the aftermath of the George Floyd riots, it was a lot more than that. And it was about people taking advantage uh, of what were initially protests and turning them um, into something violent as an excuse for race baiting and dividing the country and just I'm just gonna go into my experience, and by experience I don't mean like I don't mean I was like personally involved in either of these. I mean I wasn't even at the Capitol building when I was in Chicago, but there, like I said, the riots affected Chicago too, which is my city, and at the time I was taking online classes, so the pandemic had already started, and uh, I was taking online classes, and so I was just following everything from like the videos that people were taking and what was happening in the news. Uh, I didn't personally witness these things. I mean, I did to some extent. I didn't personally witness all the violent things that happened, which was a good thing for me. I just like mostly heard about it and saw it through like videos and everything. Um, at the time, I lived in South Shore, so I lived um, on the South Side, and um, those areas were affected too. So there was like, well, let me get into what happened. So there were a lot of reports of looting, vandalism. Of course, the defund the police movement. Um, it gained a lot of traction at this time. I remember like listening in on city council meetings, Chicago city council meetings, and during public comment, a lot of people were talking about defunding the police, and yeah, that was like pretty much all people were talking about. Um, Not talking about like the actual violence or the actual like real issues that have been going on in this country for decades that wasn't addressed. Uh, but yeah, a lot of looting, vandalism, attacks on police, very violent attacks, and I remember like um, on YouTube, this person posted this video, and it was live too, and I was watching it. And as soon as I saw the video, I immediately recognized the area, and I was just can't even describe like what I was feeling because I mean, I've lived in Chicago all my life. I'm 27. I've like never experienced anything like this. It was just like I've never felt such like empathy and pity and anger and sadness like all at once over like what was happening in my city. Like usually I was too like consumed with like what was going on in my own life to pay attention like what was going on in my city, but ever since I gained an interest in politics, I've been paying more and more attention about all the issues that are happening in Chicago. And so when the 2020 riots happened, like it was like right in front of my face. Like, I couldn't do anything but pay attention. So I was watching this video. I mean, what caught my attention immediately was like the area was being filmed was around like my old college campus. And I mean, I remember the video clearly. Like this person was walking around filming. Like it was just so surreal to see. Like I literally used to go back and forth taking the bus to and from this college and just like hanging around the area, walking around the area, uh, waiting for the bus at the exact bus stop where the glass was smashed at this bus stop. There's glass laying all over the concrete. People were all on the streets. The police were outnumbered, like throughout all of the riots, but like in this video too. Like there's this huge crowd of people, like um, people in masks and just people going into 7-Eleven and these other stores, just raiding these stores and just like hitting these ATMs with hammers and trying to break apart these ATMs and steal the cash from them. And I mean, like people might be wondering, where's the police during all of this? And like, I mean, there's only so much they can do. Like the police response during the riots were criticized much more than that the rioters were being criticized. I mean, to no surprise there, since the defund the police thing was happening, and they're being criticized for like being too. Their tactics were too like violent, and I mean, but look what they were up against. So, I mean, you can't really be expected to be peaceful when you're having projectiles, dangerous projectiles thrown at you, when you're being threatened, when you're being attacked and punched and kicked, and your life is at stake. Then you definitely have to rely on your training for that. But anyways, back to this video. The thing that always stood out to me that I remember most is when they set this police car on fire. So they set the car on fire, and they just, everybody was like cheering and just watching it as it was just up in flames, and then eventually the black smoke just like went up in the sky, and like it was creating like this huge cloud of black smoke, and and then I started hearing this like loud banging noises that were coming from the police car. People were like, "Get back! It's gonna explode!" And I don't remember if it did explode or not. Uh, and then the police showed up. Some police showed up to that area, but they were like being pushed back, and from the area. Uh, and yeah, it was really sad to see the like how sick can people be to just like cheer on as like they're destroying their own city, causing all this like rampage and violence and destruction, um, and just not like feel anything from it. And I guarantee you, it wasn't because George Floyd was killed. It was much more than that. It was just evil, and if they really cared about what happened to George Floyd, I mean, they wouldn't be doing any of this. Believe me. Um, so yeah, all these places that I used to walk, sit in, and now like not too long after, um, now it's like being like destroyed by these riots. Um, and yeah, and then as the video continued, I also remember there was somebody called the fire department, and so saw the fire truck driving toward the flaming police car to try to put out the fire. And then the crowd of people started like blocking the fire truck, and it was just really really stupid. um, that car could have exploded and just caused all sorts of uh, death and damage, and but nobody cared, of course. So they blocked it from coming through and putting out the fire. uh, yeah, I don't know how that fire was put out, or I don't know what happened after the fire truck left. But the fire truck did eventually. I watched as it turned back around and it drove away, because like what else was it gonna do? It couldn't just like crash through, like drive through the crowd of people. even though they were like unlawfully blocking them from doing their job. So yeah, I don't remember like too much else about that video. Um, but yeah, it was over everything like that happened. I remember that video the most because, like I said, it there was some connection to me, even though I was not personally there to witness this. I mean, like like I said, I was very familiar with that area, so I mean, my college campus was like literally down the street from where all of this was happening, and I just felt so bad that like it. I had it in my mind like, why don't I? I knew there was nothing that I could really do. I mean, I could, but at the risk of my own safety and my own life. So I decided against it ultimately. But there were many times that ran through my mind that I could go out there and do what I can to help the police out um, and go by that area and to my college and see if they need see if anything was like damaged, see if they needed any help cleaning up or anything like that. Just do little things like that. Um, Try to like do my part to bring some good into the situation. I don't know, but like I said, I was taking online classes. I was just too focused and invested on graduating and like focusing on school because I knew my own ambitions um, before I could reach my own dreams and goals. I had to complete the task that was in front of me. And if anything happened to me, then, I couldn't do that. Um, so, yeah, I just wasn't equipped. And the police weren't even equipped either. They didn't have the necessary tools to handle riots of that level. I mean, that's why these states were trying to deploy the National Guard because it started to get beyond what the police could handle, way beyond that. Um, and then, yeah, there's another video where I saw the projectiles I mentioned earlier being thrown. Um, so there was this crowd of people. I forgot where this happened, but it was in Chicago. And they came and surrounded like these few police officers, and they were just like completely unprepared and unequipped for what happened next. But like they outnumbered these officers, and they brought these like black umbrellas, and they used it as a shield. So these group of people like had these umbrellas and they turned it like outward and like used it as a shield. And then they had these projectiles. I forgot exactly what they were, but like uh, they were pretty dangerous. I think they were bottles, but I think it was I can't remember, but they were like heavy, like they were dangerous projectiles, and they were being like thrown. All these people were throwing at these police officers, and like I said, there weren't a lot of officers, so like they couldn't like contain this, and they were using the umbrellas as a shield. So like if the officers trying to like pepper spray them, mace them, or like do anything to them or whatever, like they had these umbrellas to shield them while they threw these projectiles over the umbrellas at the officers. And I was reading an article about that after I watched the video, and unfortunately, one of the officers was like hit in the eye and he had to like go to the hospital. But I think he lost his eyesight from that. And there were others that I can imagine that were injured too. Um, but yeah, I watched the video again. It was sad and it was disgusting. Like just and I mean the officers like they couldn't shoot them, or we could imagine what would happen to them if they did that. It's another like situation where Any sort of self defense that the officers try to do to protect themselves, it would be seen by the city and by the public as like criminal, and they would be penalized for that. So yeah, the police pretty much felt that they weren't getting any help or support by the city. Nobody cared about them. They were working overtime because of the pandemic and because of the riots. I mean, it's still going on. Like violence has in the city and over the country has gotten worse since the riots and the pandemic. And of course, people want to blame the pandemic on like everything that's happened. Uh, but I know better. It's not the pandemic at all. Um, a virus doesn't cause people to act like evilly and violently like this. Um, so yeah, I might post links to the videos if I can find them. Some people might have watched the videos, but for those who haven't, they could get a better visualization of what I saw and what I'm talking about. Um, yeah, but there were other people. Like I said, I wanted to go out there and like help like do something to just like de-escalate things, stabilize things, but wasn't much I could do even if I did do that. But there was like I saw some videos of other people who, were standing their ground against these terrorists and these criminals, these rioters. There was one video of this girl and this guy. He was trying to like, I think he was trying to loot this store, so he was trying to break into the store, and she stood in front of the store and blocked his way. And so he grabbed her arm and yanked her away, and then she went and stand back in her place. And then eventually he left, and then after another guy joined her and stood next to her, and basically just like safeguarded the store to prevent any looters or vandalizers from attacking it. So I was like, oh, that was pretty cool. I could imagine, if I did anything, that would have been something that I would have done. Um, so yeah, but again, these people were outnumbered, like the police. It was just it was just chaos. And oh, and then there was, let me see. Um, oh, there was, I remember the Chaz or the Chop. It was, I forgot which they called it first, but there was, I think it was called Chop first. So if anybody remembers the Capitol Hill organized protests, is what they called it first. So it was basically like this. I don't even know what to call it. I mean, they later changed it to Capitol Hill. Is it Capitol Hill? Yeah, Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or Chaz, is what they later changed it to. I think that was more fitting and appropriate than organized protest because it was far from that. Uh, by the time it was disbanded and everything like leaked out about what happened at Chaz, it was clear was far from an organized protest as they claim. The autonomous zone, it definitely was. So it was this like this not community. They were, I don't even know what they were doing, and I don't even know how they thought this would like work or turn out successfully. But it was like group of people. I don't know how many. Um, but I don't know. It looked like this own little town. Like they were blocking off streets, and it was like this community of people, and like the name said, they were autonomous. So they were like trying to like form their own, I don't know, community that didn't involve like police. No surprise there. Or there was like no leadership. I'm not, I think there was probably like some leadership. I don't know. I mean, again, it was chaos. It was yeah, like they didn't if there was like some emergency, they didn't call 911, or they didn't use like any, they didn't call for any like medical assistance. They were pretty much just, handling things on their own. They were trying to live in this like weird community where they just, I don't know, that I think their point was they were trying to like prove some sort of like point that like we can survive without police. I think it was just another like attempt to like push this defund the police movement nonsense. So yeah, that didn't work out long at all, as you can imagine. I don't remember, but I think Chaz only like lasted. I think they survived like, I don't even think they survived a month. It wasn't very long at all before things just went downhill with that too. There were reports of sexual assault, robbery. A couple people were shot and killed. Um, yeah, and whenever like I saw some videos of this too. Whenever like police tried to intervene and come in, like they were, being, even if somebody was shot and was like literally bleeding and dying, like they weren't allowed to come in. And the police, they didn't try to um, force themselves in either. Like they just turned around and went back because I mean, again, they were outnumbered. If they like tried to do their job and just force their way in, then again, it would be seen as being like antagonistic and um, like wrong. So, but there in one video, they did allow them to come in and take care of a wounded person from a shooting and take them to the hospital. So that was good. But unfortunately, some people did die because they refused outside police or medical attention, which was, like, again, really stupid. But when you have a bunch of young people like that that are calling for these outrageous demands, I remember they did have a list of demands which were never met, but it was pretty ridiculous. Um, So yeah, that was Chaz, and like I said, they just lasted a couple of weeks before they were disbanded. One by one, they started leaving, and then went back to wherever they came from, probably back to their parents. And yeah, and then there are also reports of them, the Chaz people, like what's it called? Like the businesses in that area. Um, not bribe, not bribery. That's something. What's the name of that? It has something to do with money. Like they were like intimidating them into paying like some sort of fee to like enter in and come out, or something like that, or to like have their business there. What is that called? It's some sort of, not money laundering. Oh gosh, what is that? Hold on, let me look it up. Because it's gonna drive me crazy if I can't think of that name. So Chaz 2020 money, money heist, money laundering. Maybe that was the word, money laundering. Protester in Seattle's Chaz demands white people give out cash. This is from the New York Post. Six charged with fraudulently seeking to obtain nine. Okay, maybe it was money laundering. Maybe that was the name I was looking for. But yeah, that's what they were doing. Just a lot of intimidation. Uh, and then the poor people who were actually living in these areas where Chaz was like stationed, like it was rough on them too, because they were also being harassed and intimidated. And then, like I said, there were reports of all this like crazy stuff going on from within their little autonomous zone. So yeah, they didn't survive long at all, which was good. And then there were also from Chaz, there were like also other autonomous zones that tried to pop up, but after Chaz failed so horribly, then they gave up on that idea altogether, which was good too. So yeah, um, yeah. And then for January 6th, on that day, I was like, I think I was like I was doing like some stuff. Like this is when lockdowns were still happening. But I had to go out because I had to take care of some important business. I was getting ready to move apartments, so I was, taking care of paperwork and getting all that organized. So I remember, like, when on that day, January 6th happened, um, I didn't find out, like, I think I heard that a lot of people weren't happy um, from the election, like, that the direction that the election was going in. Um, but yeah, when I was out, I was, when I came back, it just came as like a surprise to me. Like when I watched the news, I was like, wow, they stormed the Capitol, and then I watched that video that went viral of that lady. They were trying to this group of people, crowd of people were trying to like break inside this door, I think, and then she was like trying to, I don't know, she was like trying to go through this window or something. I don't really remember, but she got shot and killed as um, somebody inside. I'm assuming like maybe an officer or somebody who had a gun. Um, because there's some people in Congress who carry too. But she was shot and killed, and yeah. So, but yeah. Overall, in like between January 6th and the 2020 riots, like it's like even more disturbing, or the riots happening was the fact that everybody's acting like it never happened. Like after it happened, it's so weird. Like this it went on for like 4 or 5 months and it destroyed the whole country. Billions of dollars worth of damage. I forgot to mention the statue removal. Um, all of these historical statues in Chicago being removed, and of course LIFA was supporting it, and then it happened in other cities because people were like offended because of the history behind these statues and all of that stuff. Um, but again, it was just ridiculous, and yeah, but 2020 should definitely be needs to be brought back up because, like I said, it's people are acting like it's like it never even happened. Really, it's like it never even went on. It's I never hear it I never hear it talked about. And it was just one of the like worst things to happen in this city. I mean, in my 27 years of living here and living in the United States, to witness something like that happening, I've never seen my city or my country in that sort of turmoil. And I know there's been other riots that's happened in this country, and um, but in my lifetime, what I saw that year, that was the worst I've ever witnessed. My country being in that state, and yeah, I was even more sad that it just wasn't mentioned after that. It was just forgot about. It was just ignored. It was just avoided. It just wasn't talked about um, by anybody and by any authorities, by the public or anyone. So that's why I wanted to make this video, since people are still going on and still following the January 6th thing, even though like all these people were arrested since then. Um, but it's still going on because they're still trying so hard to link President Trump into this, and he just wasn't involved in it, but they just don't want to let that go. Um, so yeah, I just wanted this to like be a reminder of what happened to our country in 2020 during that time. It was just so horrific, and it was just so sad, and I just want that to be remembered. That's why I'm doing this video. It's more than just a comparison between the two. It's like I said, it's 2020. It happened. The 2020 riots happened on a much more large and much more like serious scale than January 6th. And they both were horrible, but 2020 uh, needs a lot more attention on that. So, yeah, not sure what else to say about that particular topic, but yeah, we'll see where this January 6th investigation goes. I predict that it's not going to go anywhere. Um, but I know this won't be the last time I'll talk about 2020. I know it's going to stick with me for a long time, for many years to come. And if I ever get in a position of political power in this city or in this country, I'll definitely be bringing up that what happened in this country on that year again.